So once you have all your ideas laid out and the outline and things are making sense, now it's about how do you really make this thing come to life through use of not just the music and the drill, but everything, these huge design elements as far as your stage, your floor, your set. Are you going to have props? Does it make sense to have props? What are we wearing? What are all these things? Is it going to correlate to the idea? Are we going to have narration? Are we not going to have narration? These are all huge decisions that have to be made. They're equally as important as the music and the drill.
When you're looking at the depth of your concept, be careful if you go too deep with the concept and it requires too much explanation, it rarely works out because the attention span of an audience member as they're taking in the audio, as they're taking in the visual, and now you're trying to lay this really deep, intense concept that's very complicated, most people are going to shut it out or you're not going to be able to get that across in a clear manner. So the depth of concept can be a little deeper if you want to use narration, but it's a dangerous thing to go too far. We really try as hard as possible to use the least amount of narration possible, but we do feel at times there's certain concepts and ideas we want to explore that can't be expressed solely through music and visual means. And I do think there is somewhat of a limit to what you can do with just music and visual in a 6 to 7 minute window. So that narration or the idea of using audio sound bites is another design element that we can use to develop a concept that might be in a different direction of what was possible solely using music and drill.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
Our favorite moments and shows are things we can make happen without having to say, this is what we are about to do. However, because every year, he'll come to me and say, man, seriously, like no more samples next year. Is that cool? And I'm like, hey, but then what if we have this great idea
Right.
and it needs just a little something just to push in the direction? Because we don't like doing these shows. We don't like going to these big regionals, spending $40,000 on a trip to Ohio just to get out there and have someone be like, I don't get it. Like for us, it's just not worth it.
Right.
I've been through that enough. I want to make sure there's something in there for grandma, for the parents, for everyone, but also have some depth for the judges as well.
The culture of every generation will change, but the sounds of children remain timeless.
So getting back more into the set and the look and the vibe of each show, it's like the floor is such a huge advantage to indoor percussion. Where we don't just have these yard lines and the big numbers and then maybe a big tiger face in the middle of the field, and that's just what it is. We have this smaller space and we're able to pull these huge tarps out. So it's such a great advantage. I feel like a lot of groups just don't take advantage of it enough, or it's maybe they try to do something cool, but then it doesn't necessarily reflect the show. What are we wearing? What are we just like with the Timeless show? We're just gonna wear an indoor uniform. We're just gonna do that, or we could do this kind of like grandfather clock, like sundial type of idea. Like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. We can have pieces of a clock like on the legs. We can have the Roman numerals from this time, without trying to be too cheesy, there's a fine line with all of that, very fine line. It's scary. It's like with a Timeless floor, should it just be, just clean, or should it be a little more aged?
Right.
Oh, it should be a little more aged. Maybe there's some Roman numerals. Maybe there's just like a very subtle clock vibe out there.
Because we were really just ended up for the set, talking about just how do we create this sort of sepia tone vibe, this aged, bronzed, sort of antiquated thing, like old grandfather clock and all these little pieces that when you see it, it feels kind of nostalgic. So,
but we didn't want it to be too busy. We'd seen a bunch of images online, like this could be it. And, looking around for that too. Like this is the inspiration for the floor, but not this crazy. At the end of the day, we want to see the kids, the performers, and we want them to pop. So we went with a more rustic, aged floor. Then we made sure they had a nice accent color with this bright orange. and kind of these silvers to make sure they were still, popping out on top of all that. And then you, of course, you throw up these digital images across the back, these huge backdrops, and try to get like immediately when you come out. It's always good when you come out and you know exactly what the show is before you've played a note. Maybe not exactly, but you get the,
and
you know where you're about to go.
If you're doing this and you're listening to your tape and you start the show and the judge goes, oh yeah, great, I love the set, I love the costumes, great color scheme. That's the kind of mentality you want to set the judge into when they see your show. They see that aesthetically, you've really tried and set the stage. Your color combinations are working well together. The kids pop and they're readable. They're really setting the stage for them on that.
The power of the set is very strong. We talk about this a lot. If you pull your floor out and the crowd goes, ooh, it might not be a good thing once all the performers are on top of it. Because it's like, what's the focus? We've had this problem, with Pulse a few years back. Every time that breathe floor came out, we got this huge face and this huge artwork thing, and it's really intense. Every time, ooh, I love your floor. And then we throw the performers on top, you can't read any of the drill. So it's like, where are we at? What's the priority with all that? We've ran into that many times. Sometimes a set with a little bit less, but gives the vibe, will definitely be a little more effective.
Within that visual element of design, we have to consider the costume or the uniform of what your members are going to be wearing. And that is something we spend so much time on that. We have a great costume company, but we have to bring so much to the table, and there's a constant back and forth. It's like, is the costume too much? Is it not enough? Even just picking the colors and the fabrics and the textures is something we slave over. I mean, it keeps us up at night. And we feel ridiculous. We'll find ourselves in a store or looking at fabric, like, what do you think about this fabric? I don't know, John, do you think this is good enough? Ooh. It's kind of stretchy. I think this will be good for the legs. And you feel like an idiot. You're like, I need to go work on the music. But these are things that are so important because it's what that member has to wear every time they perform the show. And bad decisions in costumes can turn out very bad on the floor. One thing we were talking about is, some common errors are picking a costume that just doesn't have the functionality to be useful in a show. So if you're doing the Pit and the Pendulum and it's really dark and you go, I want to do this really horror show and it's got to be dark, so I want them in masks and hoods and cloaks and chainsaws. And so then you got these props and you got a sickle and a hammer and they have all these things and then you go, oh yeah, wait, no, but they have to put a drum on too. So then they put a drum on and they have cloaks and they have hoods and they have masks. So you can't see their face, they can't hear their neighbor, and you can't see their feet when they're marching. And then you get halfway through the season, okay, never mind, wait, pull off the cloaks, those are all gone. And all that could have been solved in the beginning if you thought more about the logistics of how is this costume gonna work and is it gonna be the right thing for this show? If you're just starting out with your group, it's always better to keep it simple, keep it basic, and just make it as functional as it needs to be for your show. And the best way to do that is contact your local costume company, and they should have templates that are already cut out. They should have pictures of the uniforms that are already there. And that's a great way for you to see something that already exists in real time. You don't have to imagine it. And you go, oh, well, that'd be really cool, but what if the arm was blue instead of red, and then we do white pants? That would look really good on our floor. Bam, easy, done. You can go there and have your kids measured and everything's very easy.
The biggest thing is simple. You don't want to make it a deterrent now with the floor and the uniform. It's like you want to make sure there's a little bit of contrast from the floor to the uniform. That's like the main thing, so you can read it, unless your show is called camouflage. But your average show, you want to be able to see these guys sticking out. Keeping the floor nice and simple, keeping the uniform simple is like step one, and getting that. Because I've never had a judge say, I wish the floor had more on it. And there's usually not a lot of commentary really on the uniform. I see a lot of beginning groups go out there and they had like some parent come in and it's like there's an artist and they'll paint this elaborate thing on the floor. But it just has so much weight to it, and now like I can't read the performers on top of this huge graphic in the middle of the floor, or a lot of people also do the thing like where our show's called this, so our floor is gonna say title of the show right in the middle of the floor. It's like, I get it, but now it's just there the whole entire time, and now you have this weird weight. So it's just about keeping it really simple in the beginning and then slowly growing from there, I think, over the years.